Hi, welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, I want to provide you with an important update on the war in Iran because I think this story has now reached a really critical point. And the reason this matters is not simply because what's happening between the two countries, Iran and the United States. This has potential massive implications for virtually every major economy around the world because although the large-scale exchange of missiles and bombs has largely stopped, the economic consequences of this conflict have most definitely not stopped. The Strait of Hormuz remains heavily disrupted. Global shipping is still very minimal coming through that stretch of water. Oil and gas supplies remain under severe pressure. Emergency inventories are being severely depleted. Transport and insurance costs are now higher globally. And the longer this continues, the greater the risk that all of this feeds through into higher inflation, higher interest rates, and weaker economic growth around the world. So in many ways, we've moved away from the military phase of this crisis into the economic war. And potentially, that could be much more damaging over the long term, because over the past few weeks, we've repeatedly heard that negotiations are progressing. We've heard Donald Trump saying that a deal was close to being done. We've heard reports that the parameters of an agreement were emerging. There was genuine optimism that the Strait of Hormuz might reopen and that normal trade could gradually resume. But over the past few days, that optimism has evaporated. Iran says there has been absolutely no progress in reviving the interim agreement. The United States is now saying that it can maintain the naval blockade of Iran indefinitely. Washington is preparing another round of economic pressure. Donald Trump is talking about Iran paying reparations. Iran is demanding reparations from America for all of the damage. And the fundamental disagreements over sanctions, frozen Iranian assets, uranium enrichment, and control of the Strait of Hormuz remain completely unresolved. So rather than moving forward towards a peace, there is now a very real possibility that this becomes a prolonged standoff. And that matters to everyone. But before we get into the details on all, so let's start with where the negotiations actually stand, because the situation has changed quite dramatically.
Shalom, call hello, Yahweh Shemil, Shabbat, Shemil, Kakodash, double honor to the elder apostles and the elder bishops, the great millstone, even the elders that came before them, that taught us is true. Shalom and salutation to all the brothers out pushing the word in truth and in sincerity, hopefully like Tabernacle of David. I'm the elder Yahshua back with the WW3 Daily update. Shalom and salutations to you all. Let this guy continue to talk. He's giving you the economic ramifications, repercussions of the war, which are part of the war. We lost the war, and now what happens is the results of losing the war kick in slowly. And what is that going to do? That's going to bring the war into the next phase, which is World War III. Okay? Because post-war, which we're in right now, is destroying everyone. The world is, all countries are suffering behind that war. How? The system is broken, the apparatus, the oil, right? The continuity of the system has been broken, and now it's a matter of whether it can be fixed or brought back up to speed, which it cannot. Okay? So, because nothing is going to be able to go back to normal, people are going to start scrambling or vying, if you will, for the top spot, the vacuum. Okay? There's a vacuum for the top spot because America lost the top spot. Now it's up for grabs. It doesn't automatically mean that Iran, because they won the war, gets the top spot, right? Because other dogs are like this, oh, I got more bite than you, so let's figure this thing out, right? Top spot is up for grabs right now. Why? Because America lost control of it. And now the system is broken. It's a matter of time before one of these potential top dogs strikes, which causes World War III. We'll let him continue to talk, but the economics of it all, right, are the centerpiece, the fuel for the war, because everybody's in trouble right now.
Back in June, the United States and Iran agreed an interim arrangement that was supposed to bring an immediate and permanent end to military operations and provide a window in which the two sides could negotiate a comprehensive agreement. That agreement subsequently fell apart. Donald Trump declared it effectively over in July, and Iran later suspended its participation. Since then, mediators have been attempting to resurrect it, but Iran is now saying there has been absolutely no progress. And that's significant because only a short time ago we were hearing much more optimistic language. Pakistan was suggesting that some sort of deal might be close. Donald Trump repeatedly talked about negotiations moving forward, but those expectations are now being replaced by much harder language on both sides. And probably the biggest change has come from Washington. The United States now says it believes it can maintain the naval blockade of Iran, where it's stopping all of Iran's exports and imports indefinitely. US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says America has sufficient naval resources to rotate ships through the region and keep the pressure on Tehran for as long as necessary. At the same time, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said that more economic measures are coming. So increasingly, the strategy appears to be moving away from trying to negotiate a rapid conclusion to the conflict and towards something much simpler. Economically squeeze Iran, stop it generating income, restrict its ability to export its oil, cut it off from international finance, increase the cost of trading with the country, and then wait. Washington appears to believe that eventually the economic pressure will become so intense that Tehran will have no choice but to accept America's terms. And the language coming out of Washington is increasingly becoming provocative. The United States is considering additional sanctions against the companies, banks, tankers, and countries that continue dealing with Iran. China is particularly important because before the war it was buying the overwhelming majority of Iran's seaborne crude exports. If Washington starts imposing much more aggressive secondary sanctions against Chinese companies or even Chinese banks, then suddenly this stops being merely an Iran problem. You potentially introduce another major point of confrontation between the United States and China, because we've obviously got that with regards to what's happening with Russia and its sanctions. And that could have consequences for trade, financial markets, and global supply chains far beyond the Middle East. So this is exactly why what is happening in Iran is so important globally. Every new layer of economic pressure creates another potential economic shock somewhere else. Iran isn't operating in isolation. China needs energy, as does Europe.
And how is, I'm going to cut him right there. And just want to show you on the way out how flippant Esau is. So China would emerge because Russia right now is got their hands full. China would emerge as the new superpower. But look at how Esau is over here talking. Sink them. What if we just some China's area? What? Look at this Delta. You just lost the war. What are you talking about? What is this?
Sunk China's aircraft carriers. Welcome to China Uncensored. What if we just sunk China's aircraft carriers? Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. We've got a problem. China's built a whole lot of missiles they call carrier killers, as in U.S. aircraft carriers. Gee, I wonder if the CCP considers itself as being at war with the U.S. I'm being as subtle as a missile called carrier killers. It's so bad, there are top 5 listicles about China's carrier killer weapons. You know you're evil when you're assisting the clickbait industry. These aren't just headlines. Here's Pete Hegseth a few months before he was confirmed as Secretary of War on the Sean Ryan Show.
China's building an army specifically dedicated to defeating the United States of America. That is their strategic outset. Take hypersonic missiles. So
Iran did the same thing and won. So China, all China has to do is study Iran. Matter of fact, they're already on the same.
If our whole power projection platform is aircraft carriers and the ability to project power that way strategically around the globe, and if
Woo! You hear that? Really? With Lincoln out there looking like it is right now, we're not projecting no power. Those fools are jumping off the side of, and they're going to have to sink that thing because they don't want those people coming back in and telling their story.
15 hypersonic missiles can take out our 10 aircraft carriers in the first 20 minutes of a conflict. What does that look like?
I know that question was meant to...
End it right there. Revelation 11:14. Second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh very quickly. Third woe cometh quickly, very quickly. They're lining up. All right. Right?
Be rhetorical, but I'll answer it anyway. A nightmare. Not only would we lose American lives, but each aircraft carrier costs an insane amount of money.
Shalom.